Hello and welcome to the Addicts Anonymous podcast. I'm your host, Jamar. Today's episode 211, and we're going to be interviewing Tiffany. How are you doing, Tiffany?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited to do this. So let's get started. Tell me about your childhood and growing up.
I grew up in Reno, Nevada, and my parents were alcoholics and heroin addicts. And I don't have too many memories. My dad passed away when I was 10. He had a stroke and ended up dying. I'm really not sure, the logistics of it because I was a kid.
Mhm.
And my mom was a waitress and she took care of my sister and myself, but she was a struggling heroin addict. So I spent a lot of time ditching school and running away pretty early on and got involved in drugs fairly early on.
Where did you run away to?
So I had a friend who would she was a couple years older and she would steal her mom or uncle's car and we would run away and meet men that were too old for us
Mhm.
and like hang out with boys and drink and just not do good things. And then as time progressed, I would run away to like my boyfriend's house or whatever, but it wasn't really running away in this typical sense of running away. Um, my mom was very absent, obviously. And so I didn't have much structure or rules really to follow. So it was more so like running away from the law, I guess. Fairly early on, 12 years old, I got caught with that friend in a stolen car. So that like progressed like a lot of juvenile hall visits from a very early age.
So, was that the first time you ever did anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, she had taken her uncle's car and we, joyrided in it all day. And like at the end of the day, it was time to go home. And I was just like, oh, we'll just stay out. And we ended up getting like pulled over by the police and arrested
Oh,
in
God.
that stolen car. And so that happened a couple more times where I got caught with her in stolen cars. And this is like, 12 years old. She was a few years older, but um, so it got to a point that I was on probation. And so it wasn't necessarily running away from my mom. It was more so running away and not like checking in with my probation officer and not going to school. And just like an all around not doing what you're supposed to be doing at 12 and 13 years old.
Wow.
Yeah, it was not good.
Sounds like you grew up fast. I mean, I
It
can't
really.
even imagine a 12-year-old. I'm joking in my head. I'm thinking like behind the wheel like this, not even big enough to do it with their
So
thoughts on
it
or
is a
something.
different life. I now have a grown son and a younger son. And as my son was a teenager, my husband would tell me like, you can't compare anything that he's going through to what you went through because you lived a life that like it's not it's just not a normal life. And like he's right, I didn't have the life that my kids have, and it's just really really weird. I don't know. I wish I could go back and like have a normal childhood because it just gets crazier, man. It just gets crazier from here. Um, so yeah, so I actually started doing meth at 13 years old. So
Oh my goodness.
uh, it led to just a lifetime of struggle and addiction and just a struggle that comes with that life.
Who did you do it with the first time?
So another one of my sister's friends. Surprisingly, my sister was actually a good kid, but she just had these friends that were not so good. So um, if I remember correctly, I think that the girl called to invite my sister to go out with her, and it was New Year's Eve, and like my sister was doing something else, and I was like, oh well, I'll go out. And we hung out with some guys. I was 13. I think she was probably 15. And the guys were probably, 17, 18, if not maybe a couple years older. And I did a couple lines, smoked some meth in these guys' garage apartment. Um, and like stayed up for 3 days and like stayed at her house. And my mom never knew. I don't even know how she couldn't, looking back. Um, but she never knew. I mean, she was, a drug addict herself, so she wasn't paying close attention to what was going on. And
Was she at like this time, when you're first using and going through all this stuff, was your mom still using or was she in recovery?
oh no, she was never in recovery. So around this same time, she actually okay, so she did get clean at some point for a few months, I think. She ended up overdosing. So I think she was clean for a few months when I was 13. Um, and she had went out with a guy and she came home. We were actually living in a weekly motel, my sister, my mom, and myself. And she came home, and the guy, who I guess had been like a friend of my mom and dad's years prior, who ironically was called John the Baptist, he brought my mom home and was like, she's drunk, let her go to sleep. And she was overdosing. We ended up calling my aunt. She was, eyes rolling in the back of her head, skin changing colors. And my aunt lived in California. She called the police, and they came and like gave her Narcan and woke her up. And she ended up going to jail for like some tickets. She had like unpaid ticket warrants or something. And so later in life, she told me that she had been clean and that she had like went and did a speedball, and that is why she overdosed, because she didn't, she just like went back to her regular way. But my mom actually didn't. She did get clean from heroin when I was, I think, 18, but she passed away when I was 20 from cancer, and so it
Sorry to
didn't
hear
last
that.
long. Me too, but I appreciate that. I mean, I never know what to say in that
Oh
situation.
yeah, yeah. I wouldn't either. I
Life
wouldn't either.
happens, and it's just the cards. So, but
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Um,
Yeah, it's just to us it's part of our lives. We can't,
yeah,
it's just becomes part of who we are. But
right.
what were you mainly use? So throughout your drug use in the beginning, was it mainly meth or did you explore the options?
Yeah, no, I mean, I smoked weed, um, and drank alcohol, and did meth. I don't think until like my late real late teens, probably 19, I like started messing around with like ecstasy and maybe like a little bit of pain pills, but I never like that. I dated a guy later on, um and he was, big into opiates and heroin and Xanax and stuff like that. But I never did anything, I was never into downers or anything. And it was just pretty much meth. I did coke much later, in my mid 20s, I think, for the first time. Um, but yeah, I just liked doing, I like smoking meth. Um, but it got me in a lot of shit all throughout my teenage years.
What kind of shit?
Um, well, so on my 14th birthday, I was transported to, I don't know how to even describe it. So it's a place, it's called Caliente Youth Center. It's like a youth prison, I guess you would say. When you come out, you're on youth parole. It's like a structured environment where you live like with a group of girls and you are checking each other for like doing bad things. And, they're teaching you a better, way to live life, I guess. So I was there. I got sent there for 7 months. I got out. I went to rehab for 3 months. My mom was also in rehab at that time. But I ran away from that rehab. I went back to that place, Caliente. I moved to California for about 1.5 years with my aunt. My sister had moved there also. I couldn't get out and go live with my mom because she was, I don't know, in rehab or out. I'm not really sure where she was right then. But then, so I did well there for a while. But then somehow, I started doing meth over there. And they found out, my aunt and uncle, so they kicked me out. I went to a group home for a little while, and then I was able to go back with my mom. And so I was 16. And shortly after, I wasn't there that long, probably less than 6 months, I guess. My mom got arrested from absconding from probation, and I was on parole, and I was like gonna go to become a ward of the state or something. And so I met some random guy, and went to the jail, and my mom signed some paper saying that I can marry him 3 weeks after knowing him. So I married him at 16 years old with a letter from my mom. I couldn't even see her. I got a notary there. My mom was like in lockdown. She had gotten in a fight in jail. And they just like had her meet with the notary and sign it. Like they wouldn't let me see her. It was just like a really strange situation. I married him.
At 16. Wow.
At 16, a couple months before I turned 17. And then I had my older son right a couple months after I turned 18. His dad was real abusive and physically abusive and cheated on me all the time. And about a month after my son was born, I was back working, and I got a call saying that my son was in the hospital. And my husband, I guess, I don't know, nobody knows really what happened, but my husband had done something to cause him to go in the hospital. He had a subdural hematoma in his head. So like maybe he smacked him or something.
What is that? What is that in layman's terms? Is that like
so it's like a bleed on the brain between the skull and the brain or something.
And how is that usually formed?
So shaking a baby or
Okay.
hitting them, and he had like a bruise on his face. But my ex-husband, had some story that the baby fell out of his arm, and he went to grab him or catch him, and his hand, he caught him on the face. I don't know, but he got charged with neglect because regardless, he didn't take him to the hospital, and he had a bruise on the side of his face. And so the baby got taken. He went with my husband's parents because I couldn't take care of him. And I was in this physically abusive relationship, and I kind of believed or stood behind my husband. I don't know. I don't know. I fucked up. And so I was in the process of trying to get my son back. His dad was in jail. I met the heroin addict boyfriend, who was somebody from the past, and immediately got pregnant again while my other son is not in my custody. And so there was a lot of drug usage in and out of that relationship and pregnancy, unfortunately, in the beginning of it. By the time I had that second baby, I had gotten my first son, my older son, back most of the time, but was still strongly in, addiction to meth, while my boyfriend was addicted to heroin and meth and anything that he could get. I got pregnant again, probably like 6 months after I had the second baby. So now I am 19 or 20 and gonna have a third baby. My mom at this time has gotten sick with cancer. And I'm pregnant, like with this loser guy. And I had been clean. I had been clean for most of my pregnancy, at least from the very beginning, when I found out or whatever. And I ended up doing some meth. My boyfriend was like missing. He would like just leave for, days at a time or whatever, and wouldn't come back. And a friend of his came over and I did like a small line of meth, and it put me into labor. And I went into labor, and after like being up for, a day or so. And while I was in labor, my mom was, I'm going to get emotional now. My mom was taken to the same hospital and died while I was having the baby. So my mom died sometime before midnight, and then the baby was born like sometime after midnight. And I'm sorry.
No,
So that sucked. Which this then in turn, so then I guess I was drug tested, or the baby was drug tested in the hospital, and we were positive. And I actually think I was positive and maybe the baby was negative, or vice versa, something like that. But I still had CPS in my life from my older son. And so they took my older son and they gave me the option to place a temporary, the new baby temporarily. The second baby and his dad took off and went to Baltimore so that the second baby wouldn't be taken. So now I'm alone. My mom has died. All my kids are gone. And I was 20 years old, and I just like went pretty hardcore for a while.
You mean with your drug use?
Yeah. Yeah, because, I didn't have anything else, holding me back. I mean, for a little while, the whole time I was going and visiting my son at this, like, I don't know what it was, like, community. I mean, it was like an orphanage. If I really, like, be honest, it was like a kind of like an orphanage where, kids were waiting for foster home or for like their parents to come get their shit together. But then, I was just getting high all the time. And I ended up getting in some trouble with the law. I was in the midst of a drug deal with a confidential informant. And so I got arrested, and I pled guilty. I pled guilty to possession with intent to sell, mostly because I didn't want to sit in jail anymore, and I just wanted to get out, and I didn't think about really what I was pleading guilty to, and looking back now, I wouldn't have done that, but I pled guilty. I signed like a deal with, you know, I'll plead guilty to this and I'll do like a suspended sentence of drug court and probation. And if I don't do that sentence, then I will, go to prison for 2 to 4 years. Well, I got let out on my own recognizance after pleading guilty, and I was to go to sentencing, a couple months later. And that wasn't going to work because I couldn't get clean. And how do you go to drug court if, I don't know if you're familiar with drug court, but it's where
A little bit, but explain it because a lot of people don't know what it is.
So it is like where you have to go to court every single week and check in, and you also have to, say they have 5 colors and you get assigned a color, purple. So you have to call this number every day and it will tell you a color. And if your color comes up, you have to go drug test. And you have to do this, mine was 18 months. And then, my prison sentence would be wiped away or whatever. Well, I knew that as soon as I had to go in for that drug test, I was going to fail and they were going to send me to prison. So I planned to leave. And at 21 years old, I really wasn't thinking about exactly what I was doing because I've never been able to go back. I left. I got on a plane and I flew to Maryland to that same boyfriend with my middle son. In this process, the baby daughter that I had when my mom passed, I gave her up for adoption. She was adopted to a family in Baltimore that went to church with. I'm in contact with her more than almost all of the other kids. But she was up for adoption. In the process of me, the 8 months that we were separated, the middle child had been taken by his dad's parents. So he wasn't even there by the time I got there. Moved there. He was already, I think actually he may have been sober right then. We were going to like AA meetings a lot when I first got there because I was newly, not using, obviously, because I just moved across the country. He was in AA and like living in a sober house, but it was not long before like he was smoking crack and I think doing heroin, but I can't really remember the timing. I stayed sober the whole time living there. They don't have meth in Maryland, at least that I ever knew about. So we lived there a year. Almost immediately after I got there, I got pregnant again. We lived there a year. We moved to Omaha, Nebraska. And then I started doing meth again because I knew a girl that we moved there. Not like, by this point, it wasn't like, I was like addicted, I want to say. I mean, I was, because obviously I was still doing it, but it wasn't like, it was like I could do it and like, just not do it again. It was like I could casually just do it. Because
what's casual to you? Like how often would you use?
Oh, I mean, like once, and then like not another time for like 2 or 3 months. Like I would say once, but like one, like one night or whatever, and like be up tweaking for a day or two. But here's the thing: before I left Reno, at the very end, when I was like at my worst, I would sit there, and I so clearly remember sitting there with this girl and like literally hitting the pipe and being like, I fucking hate this. I don't know why I do it. I hate it. I hate the feeling. It doesn't affect me like it used to. It was different. But I mean, I was still addicted because if somebody showed up with it, I would just do it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was, it was. So I ended up, was cheating on that boyfriend, and he found out, and I had gotten a ticket months and months before and never paid a fine. And he called the cops on me, because I had a warrant for that, and they came and arrested me. And in that, I was in jail for 2 weeks, like sitting out that ticket, I guess. And in that time, my 2 kids, because we had gotten the boy back and I had a daughter, they ended up in San Antonio with his parents again. He ended up like taking 56 Xanax and driving hundreds of miles away, and woke up in a mental institution. And so the kids were gone. I was in jail. I ended up going to San Antonio with that dude's parents and my kids. And I did really well there for a long time. I met a guy, and he was retiring out of the Army, and he had some kids, and we moved to his hometown. And again, it was just like, just occasionally we would like get some meth. But then that is when I got real into like ecstasy, and sometimes whippets. Not so, I mean, a lot of whippets. A lot of whippets. And that, it was like a more of a, like, I hate to say it like this, but it was like I was trying to be a more responsible drug addict, maybe, because I was doing the whippets and like taking Dramamine, like for acid tripping. I don't want to give away things people don't know. Like I was just doing, like, I don't know. I say it's more like a childish kind now that I'm kind of thinking about it. Like it was, I guess maybe I didn't know where to get regular drugs. So I just had to like find the stuff you could buy at the store. Yeah. Which is real addicty behavior. And so that was like, not, I mean, that was like more just like a party life. Like, we were, I don't know, it was weird. During that time though, I got in a dispute with my, the father of my kids' grandfather about visiting the kids. He called CPS on us, and I wasn't afraid of anything, but I was smoking weed, and I was so afraid they were going to drug test me and take the kids that we took them to their dad's house, and I never seen them again. He moved back to Reno with them, and I have a warrant there still to this very day. I have a warrant. I can never go back. I mean, I can if I want to like bail myself out of jail and like go to court and figure out what they do. I don't know what they would do. I don't know. So I'm so afraid. So I just don't ever go back. Yeah. But he took the kids there, and I struggled for a long time after they were gone. I fell off back into meth and ecstasy and a bunch of shit. The guy I moved to his hometown with, we broke up. I moved to Louisiana, where I'm at now, with ironically the very same friend that we stole the car with on that first arrest. I mean, this is my friend that, I mean, has been through all my trouble with me. We moved here together, and she was a big drinker, so I became a big drinker, and still like the same. Occasionally we'd get high with somebody. And the last time I used meth we were living here. It was right before I met my husband. It was my 27th birthday. And some random guy knocked on the door of my trailer and was like, "Hey, you want to get high?" And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "I'm not talking about weed." And I said, "I know what you're talking about." And I got high that day and I spent my birthday by myself, sitting in the woods in the dark while some people like made meth in a soda bottle in the woods. And I just thought, like, this is horrible. I hate this and I can't believe this is my life. And I had like plans to like go drink with my friends, and I ended up sitting out there. And um like a week later I met my husband, and I never have been in that type of situation again. It's weird to say, but I literally just have never had the situation arise again. And so now it's like 11 years later. So it's, I don't know. I don't know what happened. I say that because I'm like in my brain, I'm thinking, people that knew me a long time ago, they'll tell me sometimes like, "Oh, I'm so proud of you and how hard of work it's been." But then kind of, I feel like I didn't really do anything, that I almost aged out, that I was like, I'm almost going to get emotional again. Like I wasn't given the opportunity to make that decision as a child. Like I feel like at 13 years old, I wasn't making the decision, I feel like. And so I feel like as my brain matured and became an adult, I realized like, what the fuck? Like this, I don't know. I feel like had I had a different life, I probably would have never fell into that. It was just like as an adult, I just can't imagine that ever being a way of life. And I just feel like it just came so naturally that it like stopped just like as easily as it started. And I don't know. I don't feel like that's normal, but I mean it's normal for me. So
So
I guess
you
it's,
so you didn't do anything specific to stop. You kind of
I kind of
just
just stopped. Like I said, it was, there was times throughout, years periods where it was just like a random occurrence. And I mean, I have done all of the, AA, and I've been to rehabs in my, through my teen years. So I feel like I had a lot of information from an early on age. I just maybe never implemented it. But it was never like, I think once I realized like how different my life could be without it, I just can't imagine ever going back. And so it's just not been ever ever a second thought
yeah.
anymore. Also, never once has somebody walked up to my door and randomly asked me if I wanted to get high. Which I mean, if somebody did now, I would obviously be like freaked out. It would be it's like almost a different person that I am. And it's like I can't even imagine the life anymore. It's just such a different, it's
And
just like it split one day.
yeah.
It's
So
weird.
you never had any physical cravings, like
No,
when you
I mean,
quit.
not when I at the very end, no. I mean, earlier, previous times when I was like hard into it and stuff, when I got arrested, um, I was like physically craving it. I mean, I would fiend for it in the throes of, addiction, but afterward, I just think I don't know. I feel like when I started And in my earlier years, when it was like big in my life, in my teens, early teens and late teens, it was, I don't want to like say it was like a different drug, but it was a different drug. So when I started, it was like I was doing crank, or, like bathtub crank. I don't know. As I got older, it was like crystal meth, and it was a different product. And I think it affected me differently. So almost like it was just like a drug I didn't like as much. And so I feel like the cravings kind of didn't come because I didn't like it anymore. I don't know. It's so weird. When I actually like voice it, it sounds weird coming out of my mouth. But it's how, it's just how it happened. I don't know.
Well, it sounds like me with cigarettes. One day I was kind of like, you don't even like it anymore. Like I just thought about it for a second. It smelled.
Right.
I was coughing up all this shit. It was just disgusting. And I ended up quitting cigarettes. I did use the patch though. I did have some assistance.
I also quit smoking cigarettes. I actually did not want to quit smoking cigarettes, but my husband did. He bitched at me all the time, and we used the patch, and um,
It worked for me. How did it work
it
for you?
worked, man. It
Yeah,
worked. I haven't smoked cigarettes in 7 years or something.
yeah,
Six,
it's
seven,
great.
7 years, something. Um, I did pick up smoking once after that, but I used the patch to quit again.
That's good.
Um, but yeah, but I mean, I still smoke weed like every day. And so my husband says, I will say that I'm not, we'll talk about this. I'm like, so it's really not like I'm a drug addict, because it's not like I'm struggling for life like people do, that they have to struggle for life. And he's like, well, yeah, you have other habit, you have, another habit. That's your habit. You're still an addict. You're just you're addicted to smoking weed, which I mean, I am. But it's, much better addiction. I'll take it.
Yeah, take that any day of the week.
Yeah.
Some people are completely against it. I don't know where I am. I mean, because I think it's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, I don't think it's good to be addicted to it, but if some people, you can use it responsibly. You know what I mean?
Correct.
As long as
I
that's the
agree.
only way to say it is if you use it responsibly, there's no big deal because
Right. I
just
mean,
like some
addiction.
people, you go.
Oh, no, you can go.
No, I was gonna say just like some people, like I've heard of people that are like heroin addicts that once every 3 months they'll have a beer or something, and it's no big deal because that wasn't their thing. They don't have to
Right.
worry about they don't have to worry about slipping into old habits because drinking was never an old habit.
Right.
I mean, don't be
Well,
wrong. You could,
I mean, I look at it like I I go to work every single day. My bills are paid, and I can afford to smoke weed. So if I can do that, then it's not causing me a problem. Now, my son, when he was a teenager, he couldn't load the dishwasher. If I would know he had been smoking weed because of the way that he put the dishes away in the dishwasher. If you can't get life done, then you just shouldn't do it. And that's what I had to tell people. People would tell me, like, you don't feel like a hypocrite telling your son he can't smoke weed? Hell no, because you know what? I can get my stuff taken care of, and he can't, and he's a teenager, and he
and
can't.
one day he might be able to use it responsibly, just not
Right.
yet.
Not yet. Well, now he's in the army, so he's not using it. But that's
There you
exactly
go.
what I said. And I always said, if you would have been responsible, I probably wouldn't have minded you smoking weed in high school and junior year or senior year. But you couldn't. And so I couldn't let you. I mean, just because I smoke it doesn't mean that I think that children should.
Yeah, exactly.
So I don't I mean, I always smoked weed all throughout, but I don't think that that's the only problem I think I have with it is that it's legal where I'm at. And so, or illegal where I'm at. Um, but otherwise, I mean, I'm not going into debt over it, and I think it's okay.
Yeah, and there's no need to justify it to anybody
Right,
because I say to everybody, you know if you're sober.
right.
So unless you want to lie to yourself,
Yeah,
then have fun lying to yourself because it's going to do nobody any good. You shouldn't care
right,
what people think,
right,
and you know if you're sober.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah,
because I use
you're right.
Delta 8. I used to use medicinal marijuana. I had like a card and everything, but for some reason I don't like it anymore.
Yeah, you
It
changed. I
just
was gonna
happened.
say, you
Yeah,
just
things
changed.
change. Yeah, things change.
Yeah,
But I want to quit smoking because I do want to be a teetotaler. I want to be a guy that doesn't do anything at all.
yeah.
I think that'd be cool.
I think it would be cool. I think it would be cool. I haven't gotten there yet, but
Yeah, me neither. So it's always something to strive for. It doesn't hurt to have a goal,
right, right.
and that's my goal is to one day not. I think I could quit smoking.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah,
I know you can.
thank you. I appreciate that.
No problem.
So again, towards the end here, did you have anything else you want to add in?
Think so.
My
I don't.
last question that I ask everybody is, do you have any advice for people watching and listening?
Yeah, I think my advice would be, hmm. I think my advice would be to remember that nothing stays the same and everything is always changing, and where you're at, look, I'm getting emotional. Where you're at right now is not where you're going to end up. And so I feel like I have been at the worst places in life, and I never thought I would be where I am now. And if you just keep trying and keep going, and I feel like if you just keep looking at the bright side, your future is bright. If you look negatively, you're not that your future is negatively, but negative. But if you're optimistic and looking forward, life is always getting better. And where you're at right now is not where you're going to end up. So I think that's my advice, to just know that things always change.
That's pretty powerful. That's good stuff. That's
Oh,
good stuff.
thanks.
Yeah, no, that's really good. All right. So I really want to say thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
No, it was a pleasure. You did awesome.
Thank you.
All right. So do me a favor and hang tight for a minute.
Sure.
And for everybody watching and listening, if you like what you saw and heard, go below and give us a like. Also, subscribe to see when we upload new videos. You can check us out on all social media. We're on Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Tumblr, you name it, we're on it. I also suggest checking out our website, which is www.addicts-anonymous.com. There you'll find plenty of free resources and free literature. So I hope you enjoyed what you heard today. And until next time.